Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I'm so happy to have as our guest Mr. Paul Baratiero, who is a hydrogen water specialist, and that's what we will be discussing, healing with hydrogen. Paul lectures across the world for the last 15 years, and I've seen him do fabulous presentations about the benefits of molecular hydrogen that can be dissolved in drinking water. His message has focused on the critical role of molecular hydrogen that helps to reduce oxidative stress, which leads to help with various issues related to inflammation and also the solutions through scientific studies. Paul then developed the ECHO, that's ECHO, hydrogen-enriched water system, and he has lectured across the world and has been on national television, both in the USA, Germany, and Switzerland, and on Doug Kaufman's television show, Know the Cause. He was also featured in the online seminar series, The Truth About Cancer, which was a documentary by Ty Bollinger. And he has also been on radio shows and podcasts, including the Robert Scott Bell Show. Paul works diligently to educate individuals on how to stay well and decrease suffering. His greatest joy actually is from serving others. And Paul, let's give your website for starters so people can find out more.
Sure. It's synergyscience.com. So SYNERGY and then science.com.
That's a great name. And, you know, we'll tool people into that again. So let's go back in time a little bit. And why don't you share how you got interested in water in terms of something that we would pay attention to and use a special kind of?
Right. So many years ago, I was working with patients with diabetes, and that was my entire focus in my practice and what I was doing with my scope of practice was preventing decubitus ulcers and wanting to help individuals with diabetes not have amputations. So when I started learning about water, that it could potentially mitigate blood glucose level issues and other diabetes issues, I was very, very surprised. At that same time, my wife, who we've been married 25 years now, at that time was about 10 years of marriage, and she had thyroid issues, she had gynecological issues, she had anemia, she had a number of issues going on with her that I didn't know at that time how to help and how to mitigate those issues. So I was looking for things that would help her and at the same time help the individuals with diabetes that I was working with. That's what led me to start doing research and start finding out how can this happen. Well, one of my friends at the time was like, hey, I've been using this thing in my business, and it's helping people with diabetes and helping people with this and helping people with that. And I was skeptical, but I, of course, would try anything, you know, as long as it's legal and what have you, but try everything at your disposal. And so when I did, it was amazing to me. Within 3 to 5 days, blood sugar levels dropped in individuals that I was working with. And then also my wife's hemoglobins, hematocrit levels, the iron levels in her blood, the anemia, the other issues that she was going through were also greatly affected. And her menstrual cycle after about, roughly 6 months was normal. And it just sent me into a huge study mode where I wanted to do a deep dive study and figure out what the heck is going on, because to me water, was what you drank and wash your car with and shower with, right? But it wasn't something that you used medically. So I really wanted to understand the mechanism of healing, and it took about a year maybe year and a half to figure that out. But once I did, of course, I was extremely passionate because it had blessed the life of my sweetheart, and it had blessed the lives of many others that I was working with.
So she was having these various issues, and then she tried some hydrogenated water and got relief, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so we didn't know, of course, at the time that hydrogen had anything to do with it. It was back before even the alkaline water machines were popular. It was, like I said, 15 years ago now, and so we just tried this water because these people were like, oh, try this water, it's helping so many people. And so when she was on her menstrual cycle, towards the beginning of it, she began drinking this water, and right away she told me, honey, something's different. I'm feeling way, way better than I should be, and I'm feeling, recovering faster. And we were actually on a cruise with these people, the friends of ours that had this water they had brought into their organic food store. And so we were on the first day of the cruise, and it was coincidentally the first day of her menstrual cycle. And so she was in bed, couldn't get out of bed, and that was pretty normal for her. Well, they brought like 9 gallons of water for them and 9 gallons for us, and I thought it was the strangest thing to bring water on a cruise. But anyway, they brought it, and she started drinking it, and instantly started feeling better. I drank it. I didn't feel much. I just thought, oh, this is good water. It's really enjoyable. But for her, she really felt some benefits right away because she needed those benefits. So we didn't even know at the time it was hydrogen. I was just doing research. I never really agreed that it was the pH of the water like everyone was saying, but I did believe that there was something in the water that was helping and would help medical issues, and later found out that it was hydrogen gas dissolved, because as we do study on the evolution of electrolysis, water electrolysis, it was Dr. Anthony Carlisle in 1800 who discovered water electrolysis, and the reason he was doing it was to create hydrogen gas. It wasn't to change pH in water. It was to create hydrogen gas, because he had been to a medical conference a couple years before that in 1798, and they were talking about hydrogen having antioxidant properties.
Right, and I think even most of our listeners have heard of why we would need antioxidants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, antioxidants are critical. The thing that's interesting with hydrogen, it is a selective antioxidant. So as you know, Ellen, antioxidants are an electron donor, which is what makes them an antioxidant. Hydrogen is a selective antioxidant. It does not donate an electron. It doesn't even have an extra electron. It's actually neutrally charged. The way it works is it combines with other things in the body that are harmful and turns them into not harmful things. So it's very, very important for mitochondrial function, for cytotoxic oxygen radicals. Those are the things that it works with. There's a ton of signal modulation in the body to where you're actually modulating things like catalase upregulation so that you don't have hydroxyl radicals forming.
Oh, wait a minute, Paul. We are on a radio show here where people are listening in their car, and you're using words. I know I often see you lecture to physicians. That's where you're usually lecturing. That's where I catch you.
Right.
So we're all on the same page with the vocabulary, but we don't want to lose people. So you can use some of those terms, but let's just, define them. Why would we care about those big words?
Well, so let's break it down. The hydroxyl radical is the most cell-damaging radical in the human body. And it's called cytotoxic because that's cell, death or cell damaging. And this is the most damaging free radical, what we call radicals, in the human body. And what makes up a hydroxyl radical is just a hydrogen and an oxygen. So it's two things only, hydrogen and oxygen, and yet this is the most damaging radical in the human body. But if we simply add one more hydrogen to it, now we have a water molecule, right? It's very beautiful science. You go from the most damaging free radical to water. And that's a beautiful thing. But you would either be chasing all of the hydroxyl radicals, because there's in the mitochondria of the body where you produce energy and ATP, there are hydroxyl radicals created. And so we would be constantly chasing them. But what we've learned is through catalase, which is an enzyme, if you regulate catalase, then you won't have hydroxyl radicals being produced as much as when you don't have catalase or that enzyme being regulated properly. And so hydrogen regulates that enzyme and that reaction really so that you don't have a ton of hydroxyl radicals produced, because then you have mitochondrial function at efficiency. So you have energy produced properly in the body, and you're able to not be tired all the time and worn out. And so this is one of the great things that people, when they drink water with the hydrogen dissolved in it, they talk about the fact that they have energy. They have more energy than they normally did. They feel, more ability to function throughout the day without getting tired and what have you.
So just by now, do we naturally do we have an ability to create that healthy state naturally, or does it have to be induced through something like hydrogenated water?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. We should naturally be producing hydrogen in our gut. We can produce 10 to 12 liters of hydrogen per day through the fermentation of food. And that's the way our bodies were created and designed to function, was to have a hydrogen generator in our intestinal tract. The problem is, with gut dysfunction that is rampant, I think a very high percentage of the population have some level of gut dysfunction or issue. Because of this, and the fact that they don't have the appropriate bacteria in the gut and they're not eating the proper foods, that combination of all of those things make it so that they're not really producing they don't have the proper fermentation in the gut, they're not processing foods appropriately, and they don't have the hydrogen, which lowers oxidation in the body. And so this is why we have a lack of hydrogen in the system. So the reason I created the whole system in the first place was to help repair the gut, first and foremost, because that's the immune system, right? 70-80% of the immune function is the health of the gut. And then at the same time, we can restore anaerobic microflora, which is the good bacteria in the gut, so that the environment of the gut is proper and we have the right bacteria there so that they can react with the foods and they can create the immune function in the body and do what the gut is supposed to do. And the water can accomplish this. We actually have people that are gluten and dairy intolerant that within 2 weeks can be eating gluten and dairy. Not that I'm saying people should eat gluten and dairy. I'm just saying you should be able to in your body if your gut was functioning appropriately.
So they're getting less sensitive. So we're going to take a little break right here, Paul, because we're close to sort of the midpoint in our discussion. And I'd like you to know, listeners, that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. You can always listen live or online at nccradio.org or, in fact, on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, email whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
Well, Jason, I've got to tell you, you're pretty much everything this company is looking for in an entry-level candidate.
Great.
Your resume isn't quite what we're used to, but you've got a fantastic work ethic.
Thank you.
And I'm impressed by how you carry yourself.
So, should we talk about the job?
What? The job? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have no way of recruiting or even meeting you. This interview didn't happen.
It may sound ridiculous, and that's because it kind of is. There's a huge pool of talent your company is missing out on. Meet the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Man, we really could have used him.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
And welcome back to more right here on A Natural Nurse, and we're right here with Herbally Yours. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we are having our discussion with Mr. Paul Baratiero, hydrogen water specialist, and you can find out more at his website, synergyscience.com. You know, it seems like such a simple thing to just look at the kind of water that we're drinking, Paul. What's the matter, besides it not having a lot of hydrogen, with just regular tap water?
So tap water has many toxic things in it, and that's going to vary based on where somebody lives. They can get reports from the municipality, but the reality is there's heavy metals, there's pharmaceuticals, depending on what people have dumped into the toilet or have exited the body through normal elimination pathways, unused RX. So we know there's chloramines in some areas. There are all kinds of things in tap water that you would not want to bring into your body, because they will put a further burden on the body having to clean those things out. And so at bare minimum, people should appropriately filter the water to remove those toxins out, because the more toxic or the more full of chemicals and heavy metals and things like this that the water has, the body almost rejects the water, because it's easier to just reject it out than to actually clean it. So it's really important to start with a clean source of water and actually drink that, so that you can be properly hydrated in the body. And you can do that by filtering tap water. Absolutely. There's no issue with that. Some people are concerned about fluoride. That's also in most municipalities, not all, but most municipalities put fluoride in the water. And
right. I just want to interject something here, Paul. What you said is very true. On Long Island, and we're actually broadcasting out of Long Island, there are towns that do not have fluoride, and I will tell you Oyster Bay is one of them, because I was actually very much involved when my children were younger. They're now in their 40s, presenting all the negative effects of putting fluoride in the water. People think it helps their teeth, but the evidence is not so strong for that.
Right. Oh, yeah, no, I mean, you remember back in the day when we were kids that you'd have the little fluoride swish your mouth out and spit it out, right? That may have some small benefit, but drinking water with fluoride in it systemically absolutely has no benefit to your teeth and bones, and it's not the right way to get fluoride into your system, even if fluoride was something you wanted in your teeth. So I agree 100%. But, there are many toxic aspects of water, and again, filtration is critical, and having the proper things in water and the things you don't want in water out. That way the body will take in the water from a hydration perspective. So that's what we do in the machine, is we, of course, filter things from glyphosate, pesticides that are in the water, heavy metals, pharmaceuticals.
Well, wait, let's not just cruise past glyphosate, because I've been working for years for people to know about that, because glyphosate is also called Roundup. And now, as we speak, there are major lawsuits I'm seeing on television every night. Lawyer against glyphosate.com and all this thing. So the toxicity of it, like the jig is up.
Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness. It's horrible. Glyphosate, even in parts per billion, like less than 1 part per billion, will have very destructive effects on the body. Jeffrey Smith, one of my very good friends, who has made several documentaries on the effects of glyphosate and pesticides in food, he asked me to test our system. So we had our system tested, and we removed glyphosate out of the water down to a non-detectable level when it goes through our machine. So this is 100% that they can protect themselves against having any glyphosate in the water, because it is in the water, especially spring water. If people are on spring water And if anyone is spraying glyphosate or other pesticides within a 300-mile radius, it can get into the groundwater and into their well. And so you will then have glyphosate in your water. And so any non-organic wheat, oats, any of these kind of things, a lot of these things have glyphosate. And what's really sad is we're not talking that they're only spraying it on the plant to keep pesticides away. When it comes to wheat and oats, within a week of them harvesting it, they spray glyphosate directly on the plant when it's ready to harvest to dry out the wheat. So it would almost be like spraying Roundup in your cereal bowl if you're going to eat cereal. And no one would do that in their right mind. No one would ever go in their garage and get Roundup, which is a weed killer, and then just sit there and spray it in their bowl. But that's effectively what they're doing if they eat the cereal that's non-organic, non-GMO, because they've sprayed it with wheat a week before they harvest it to dry it out and make it easier to harvest. It's just horrible. It's horrible, in my opinion. And the tiniest amount of glyphosate can do serious damage to the body.
So there's so many things that we can actually take action to reduce some of these negative effects. And I want you to know, listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse. And today, my guest is hydrogen water specialist, Mr. Paul Baratiero. And you can find out more about all the things we're talking about. It's a very interesting website, lots of science on the website, and it's called synergyscience.com. So you're talking about different aspects of water. What does structured water mean, Paul?
Well, structured water can mean different things to different people, but let's talk about all of them so people understand. The term structured water can mean to some people that there is microclustering, but we know that is false. There is no such thing as microclustering. It doesn't exist, and it wouldn't benefit hydration anyways, because there's a Nobel Prize won on the aquaporin and understanding two things that structuring can mean, and that is changing the organization of water into a more hexagonal type of structure. That is what some people call structured water. But I believe what most people are talking about is frequencies. When you actually talk about frequencies in water, that is what people want when they talk about structured water. That means that there can be good healing frequencies. That can be considered visible light. It can be a lot of different things. But in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion, that's what they mean when they say structured water, or what they believe it is. When we look at Lourdes, France, the water, the very healing water that's there, it has almost all visible light frequencies, for instance, in that water. And so you would definitely call that structured water. And so it comes down to light frequencies. It comes down to the actual healing type of frequencies that can be in water. And water, we know through study, is the best carrier of frequencies, period. So the best way to get frequencies in your system, or to get healthy, like people use homeopathic remedies and things, that can be done through water, very, very effective. And so that is what structured water means when we talk about it. And so when the machine that I developed, the water flows through it, you have structuring going on not only through mechanically change of the water molecules themselves, but then also frequencies going into it. We actually do both. So we do structure water, of course. Even though our focus is filtration and then hydrogen, in the process, we do structure the water very, very beautifully.
So basically, by putting more hydrogen ions, now once the hydrogen is put into the water, does it stay in there?
Yeah, it's not ions. It's just H2, neutral. It's not. There's no charge to it. But yes, it can stay in the water, and it depends on what you're doing with it. If you just pour it into a glass, then you'll have 5 hours. If it's just sitting on your counter, and you put it in a 16-ounce glass or 8-ounce glass or whatever it is, you'll have about 5 hours before you've lost half of the hydrogen gas that was dissolved into the water. If you're putting it in a bottle, let's say you have a 16 or 20-ounce bottle, and you close the lid tight and there's no airspace in that bottle, it can last days, up to 5 to 10 days, depending on how big the bottle is and what the concentration of hydrogen gas was in the first place. But it depends on how you store it. Obviously, if you put it in the fridge, make it colder, then the gas will last longer. But it again depends on how they're storing it and how long that gas. It's all about the dissolvability of gas in a liquid, right?
That's true.
Yeah, and hydrogen is number one on the periodic table, so it's tiny, tiny, tiny. It's always going to go out eventually.
Right, so it just naturally comes out of the water. Now, what is deuterium? Some people are talking about deuterium and how that affects health as well.
So it's a funny marketing thing, honestly. Deuterium is a hydrogen isotope, and it's always been on this earth. It always will be on the earth. It is in every single water source on the planet. Deuterium is naturally occurring. It's a tiny, tiny amount in the water. It is quite difficult to get rid of deuterium, and basically, if people are healthy, deuterium is going to have very little, if no, effect on the body, especially if their gut is, even somewhat healthy. The problem is that a couple of people got a hold of the fact that deuterium can harm a very small part of the population if they have, certain things going on, which actually are very poor studies as well. But basically, they began marketing this deuterium-free water and all this kind of stuff, and so it just created yet another bottled water opportunity for people to pay a ton of money for a bottle of water that is what they call deuterium depleted. And so,
So it's more like a marketing discussion than an actual health discussion. Well, we have some very good studies on how hydrogenated water can be helpful for people.
Yes, we have 700, 45 of which are human, double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover studies showing basically the same thing. We can say there's 700 studies, but really, at the end of the day, it's because of the fact that hydrogen reduces oxidative stress and inflammation, which is the main cause of disease in the first place. If you Google what's the main cause of disease, you're going to see oxidation and oxidative stress and inflammation. So any disease model or pathology that is created because of oxidative stress and inflammation will be positively affected by having the water with hydrogen gas, because hydrogen gas reduces oxidative stress, reduces inflammation, increases mitochondrial function, and the immune system as well. So this is why there's so many studies showing benefits. It's because of the fact that you're hitting at the problem that caused the diseases in the first place.
Well, that's a great wrap-up right there, Paul, because we're actually at the end of our time together, but you covered so many interesting topics, and I want to thank you so much for joining us on Herbally Yours. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Herbally Yours, produced at the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, you can certainly visit Synergy Science, that's all one word, synergyscience.com. And, of course, you can always check out our website at naturalnurse.com. And I'm your host, Ellen Kamhi, the Natural Nurse. I'd like to invite you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.